Okay, Ricochet, I'm here with Steve Meyer, who's another member of the Great Expectations Conference, and I'm going to let him introduce himself. Tell Ricochet who you are, where you work, how you managed to
Get
wind up at this
involved with
conference.
this
Yeah,
disreputable group of people.
yeah. This
Absolutely.
very secretive, disreputable group of people. He's gonna reveal some of the secrets of the Great Expectations Conference in a moment here. So,
Well, let's see. I am involved with the Discovery Institute. I
mhm.
direct the program called the Center for Science and Culture, which is the institutional home of a group of scholars and scientists around the country, and in some cases overseas, who are challenging the scientific materialist interpretation of reality. And we do that in a number of ways. One, by challenging neo-Darwinism in biology, and many of us are also advancing the positive case for intelligent design. But we're also looking at other issues that come out of science that have been said to support materialism, but also developments in science that are challenging that, like developments in cosmology, the fine-tuning of the universe that we find evidence for in physics, evidence of we look at the whole question of the nature of mind and consciousness, the mind-body problem, and what science has to say about that. So we're doing research and writing and advancing ideas that are challenging this received materialist view of reality that we got from science of the late 19th century, and showing that the science of the 21st century is pointing in a very different direction.
All right, let's talk about this idea that it's the science of the 21st century, because the received wisdom is that what you have to offer isn't science.
It's not science.
It's not science.
Right.
So let's start with a working definition of science and why you think that these ideas are science.
Well, actually, a definition of science is a very difficult thing to provide.
Mm-hmm.
It's in philosophy of science. It's called something. It's often called the demarcation problem. How do you define science? But that's really where it gets interesting in a way. Is that maybe a simple definition of science is trying to make sense of the world around us. We're trying to make sense of what we observe in the world around us, maybe using some organized methods. And typically people have said, well, intelligent design isn't science because it doesn't meet some definition of science. But usually the definition of science that's advanced is not a kind of basic definition. It's one that's ideologically tilted in some way. For example, people will say the theory of intelligent design isn't scientific because it invokes an unobservable designer, and scientific theories must deal only with material reality, which is observable. But the problem with that definition is that if we held it consistently across all the sciences, we'd end up disqualifying loads of scientific theories, not just the idea of intelligent design. Scientists often infer the existence of unobservable things from things that they can see. I often say science is indirectly inferential. So in physics, we infer the existence of subatomic particles, quarks, atoms, electrons. In biology, the structure of the DNA molecule was inferred from observational evidence in X-ray crystallography and other fields. Science posits unobservable entities in order to explain observable phenomena. Darwinian evolution does so as well, positing unobserved transitional intermediate forms or ancient mutational events, things that can't be observed but are nevertheless necessary to explain the things we can observe. That's the way science works. So many of the definitions that have been used to try to disqualify intelligent design from consideration cut just as strongly against the many accepted scientific theories and the competing theory to intelligent design, which is the materialist evolutionary theories such as neo-Darwinism or chemical evolution.
What about other theories? What are the other theories out there?
About
origins, about the question. You say that there's two competing theories, that there's either the Darwinian theory or intelligent design. What about all the other ideas?
Well, that's a good question, because there's actually lots of competing hypotheses, and this is one of the things that's often overlooked in the debate about origins. For example, there's theories of self-organizational theories. There's in my field, I work on the question of the origin of life. There's a number of different attempts to explain how we got life from non-living chemicals, theories that put metabolism first, theories that put the origin of DNA or RNA first, theories that put proteins first. So you have lots of competing concepts. But in the debate about biological origins or biological evolution, the intelligent design position was an attempt to define the issues more carefully. Evolution can mean many things. It can mean change over time. It can mean the idea of universal common ancestry, that all organisms are related by descent with modification from a single kind of organism, the last universal common organism, which was, or last universal common ancestor, which theory of life Darwin represented with his great branching tree. But the third meaning of evolution is the idea that a purely undirected process, namely natural selection acting on random variations, or we would now say mutations, produces the appearance of design in living organisms without them being actually designed, or without the process being designed or guided in any way. And that was the distinctively Darwinian contribution to the debate. And that's what the intelligent design movement is principally challenging. We're not necessarily challenging the idea of evolution in the sense of change over time. We're not even challenging necessarily the idea of universal common descent, though some of us, including me, are skeptical about that. But the key proposition that Darwinism affirms is the idea that life is the result of an undirected process, and that the appearance of design in biology that most biologists acknowledge as a reality is merely an appearance. It's just an illusion. We want to say, no, it's a real, design is real, and you can tell from the evidence.
Now, here at the conference, a lot of people don't want me to use their names. They don't want anyone to know that they're hanging out with someone like you.
Absolutely.
Now, well, first, it should be said that not everyone here agrees with Steve. There's a lot of discussion about interesting ideas, debate. Steve is willing to talk about this because he has already been outed as someone who thinks that there's a big problem with some of the, not just with Darwinian evolution, but with quite a number of scientific ideas that don't seem to be answering some fundamental questions that we've been asking for a long time. We're not getting closer to answers that are satisfying. Can you tell me a little bit about the different points of view that are represented here?
Give it a little taxonomy.
Yeah.
Well, let's start just with the debate about biological origins. It just, as was kind of implicit in my last answer, there are a number of different meanings of evolution. And someone could affirm one of those meanings without affirming all three, or could affirm two without affirming all three. And so I think you begin to realize there's a lot of different positions you could take. So on the question, there's two different aspects to evolutionary theory. There's the theory of chemical evolution, which attempts to explain the origin of non-living, of the first life from simpler non-living matter. And then there's the theory of biological evolution, which attempts to explain the origin of new forms of life from simpler pre-existing forms. So, for example, someone might be an advocate of the full-blown Darwinian theory of biological evolution, and yet nevertheless reject chemical evolution, and even go further and say that at the point of the origin of life, they see positive evidence of design. And there are a few people here at the conference who take that position. Someone might be skeptical about both biological evolution and chemical evolution and not affirm the theory of intelligent design as an alternative. They may just simply be agnostic. Someone might accept the theory of universal common descent, part of Darwin's theory, but not accept that the mechanism of natural selection and random mutation is sufficient to produce the evidence of design, and they might therefore also affirm design. So there's a number of permutations and combinations, different positions that people could take just on these issues of biological origins. And then, of course, we're discussing other issues too, like issues in cosmology, issues economics, mind-body questions. So there's a lot of issues in play. I think the general sense of the group is that there have been many positions that have been placed off the table in serious academic discussion.
I just want to clarify what you just said, the mind-body question. That was a very interesting conversation this afternoon. Why do you think it is that people are so afraid of asking these questions and having it known that they're asking these questions? What is it exactly that has the public so worried?
I don't think it's the public that's so worried. I think it's people that are coming out of an academic context principally, out of the intellectual culture, the media culture, where there are these perceptions of consensus, and a perceived consensus is a very powerful thing because it can enforce conformity, and especially where there are consequences to breaking with the consensus, or doing something that might upset the sensibilities of those who are the perceived gatekeepers or enforcers of the consensus.
What happened to you when you decided to break consensus?
Well, I was at a small liberal arts college for a number of years, and my experience wasn't terrible.